Inspiration Insider.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell me who you are, what your job title is, what your role is, and then who do you work for? And what's your cause? What do you guys do?
Sure. So my name's Dan Reed. I'm the Director of Digital Fundraising and Engagement at World Food Program USA. We're a Friends of agency working on behalf of the United Nations World Food Program.
Okay.
They do work all over the world, over 80 countries, delivering food to people in need, in emergencies, small-scale farmers, school meals, and they do it in all sorts of different ways.
So then what's your role?
So my role as digital director, I oversee a team of sort of technical and creative types that help. We work on our digital outreach, and that entails our digital ad program, our email program, and working with our teams internally to work on social media and of course our website too.
Sure. So when you talk about advertising, you're talking about like display advertising, search advertising, Facebook, all of the above?
We are all of the above. Right
Okay.
now we are in search and display, Facebook and Instagram advertising, and we're also been doing some YouTube ads as well.
Okay, cool. So is that something that you're passionate about? Is it more that you're passionate about the cause? Is this role, is this job like a perfect blend of the two?
Well, I think I love philanthropy. I've been doing that for more than a decade now, so I'm certainly passionate about all things philanthropy. But I love working in digital because I think it you get to do so many different things.
Yeah.
As far as the creative things, technical things, data analysis, all those sort of different aspects of the work, I think are really fascinating.
Sure.
And as far as World Food Program goes, I think, you know, they're the world's leading agency fighting hunger worldwide, and I don't think there's a more deserving cause than ending hunger.
Yeah, yeah. Is that a cause that you've been passionate about for a long time, or did it kind of develop because you got a job at this place?
I was at, I guess as a history, I was at a men's health agency in my early days, and then at the Smithsonian for a number of years. But I kind of came across the opportunity, and I thought it would be an amazing chance to sort of work, I thought, at a critical moment as far as what's happening in the world internationally. And certainly, like I said, for a cause that's so deserving, and an agency that is top of the line.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I'm always curious. We're actually launching a podcast here at the summit, and one of the questions that we're asking everybody who's coming on that podcast is really, how did you? And this isn't one of the questions you prepared, just what I thought of. So, anyway, how did you get into philanthropy in the first place?
Sure. I guess philanthropy starts at home. You know, I think my family had been a big proponent of helping charities. Mostly we were driven by people that we knew who were in need. I participated in like run walks and those kinds of things for cancer and cancer research.
Yeah.
And I really liked sort of that community aspect of it. And then out of college, I was presented with an opportunity to work at a developing nonprofit for men's health that did prostate cancer specifically.
Okay.
And I got to work on all those run walks and do sort of like the team raiser stuff and fundraising for around events, which I really found really rewarding. And it was cool too because it was a chance to meet the men and their families who had been affected by that disease, and get to be a part of their journey back to health.
Sure. That's super cool.
Yeah.
So then from that, where did your career go?
Oh, I went to the Smithsonian and did a lot of work. So they have a membership program, so I basically did their digital side of their traditional direct response program, which of course included direct mail and telemarketing and the like. So it was really cool to be a part of that organization. And when I was there, they were going through the throes of a capital campaign, which was really exciting to be a part of. And again, it was a chance to work for like one of the leading organizations in the world.
Sure.
To me, it was just an amazing place to work. And I have wonderful memories from working there.
Yeah, that's cool. And I ask that all because, I think that story is important leading up to now and what you've been working on and everything you've learned along the way has kind of brought you to this campaign that you guys have run and won this award for.
Yeah.
So tell me about this campaign that you guys have run.
Sure, yeah. So when I started at World Food Program 3 years ago, we were presented with a couple of problems, and one of the bigger problems that we were presented with was donor retention. What happens with an international response is that donors will sort of come all of a sudden for a particular emergency, you know, a hurricane, a tsunami, or something to that effect, or something that they hear about in the news that they see as a problem. They look for ways to help, and then what happens is those donors, unfortunately, aren't compelled to stay and in return and be a part of the organization for months and years on end. Yeah. So we kind of came to this place where we're like, we need to solve this problem of retention. We understand that our donors are coming to us because of emergencies, so how do we sort of bridge that gap? And so what we landed on, we had this tactic, I would say, running at the time, which was this upsell lightbox. And the upsell lightbox, basically when people go to make a one-time gift, they're asked to consider making a monthly gift. So we tested into that, and it worked quite well. So we were really happy with the results of that. And then we were switching merchant services with Blackbaud, which we do our ECRM with.
Sure.
And they had this service called Credit Card Updater, which when I heard about it, I'm like, so we pay $30 a month, and then all of our credit cards get updated without us having to ask donors to renew their credit cards. So I was like, this is a fabulous piece of tech that is here. Why not let's try and bake this in and leverage it into what we're already trying to do.
Yeah.
And so we worked it in, we migrated, things went really well. The migration, of course, I was very nervous about that, but it went swimmingly, and I was really happy with how it worked out. And since then, I think we've retained around almost $750,000 in monthly revenue for a $30 invoice, which I was so happy with. So I think to me that was it was a great piece of tech. And then we worked with so we have a counterpart in Rome that is basically responsible for the English-speaking UN countries in their fundraising there, right? And so they had developed a branded monthly donor program that they called the Zero Hunger Heroes. So when I met with them, I said, okay, so you guys have this wonderful, already baked, branded program that I can leverage, and then work it into what we're already trying to do in the monthly donor space, and then what we already have established for the tech. So that was sort of like year one, and then in year two, we kind of just built out upon that, right? So we did more monthly donor campaigns. We were a little bit more aggressive with our upsell lightbox. We were more aggressive with upselling our existing monthly donors, which most fundraisers will have a sort of conservative approach to that, right? Because once a monthly donor is on board, they say, okay, great, I don't want to bother them or even remind them that they're a monthly donor. Yeah. And so against that, we threw caution to the wind, so to speak, and we went and asked our monthly donors to upgrade, and we found that they were even upgrading at at really great rates. Yeah. And we even tested into the way in which we upgraded them. We had one of the ideas we did was to ask them to create a second monthly gift, and then we tested that against the idea of just asking them to reply to an email, and we can upgrade that monthly gift for them. Okay. The second one worked. And then our donor care people were a little bit, oh man, more work. But I think they quickly got over it, and we were happy to see. In fact, the other day, someone in our office got a call from a monthly donor that upgraded, and I can overhear the conversation that, oh, we just got a monthly donor to upgrade. I'm like, I love when that happens. It's amazing. She's like, I love those kinds of calls.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then all this was happening, and then so in this year, 2018, we decided to sort of formally roll out our monthly donor or monthly first approach. Okay. And so instead of having a secondary ask as the upsell, as part of the upsell, or as part of a one-time ask, we instead led with monthly, and we tested into what our forms would look like and read and how they would behave, to drive that monthly gift conversion rate up. So now we have that running across all of our different channels and our paid efforts too. And now we're just continuing to refine that monthly donor first
Sure.
approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things you said that I think are really cool. I'm trying to keep them all straight in my head. But one thing I think is really, really exciting, it sounds like testing and optimization and that kind of philosophy is like naturally baked into everything that you're doing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. When I came on board, the things that I were talking about were like, we have to be data driven, and we need to optimize on top of that and let things build out over time.
Sure.
And so that, like I said, involved testing, across all sorts of different testing, between the way we upsell folks to the way we acquire folks.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot of different things along the way. And we learned some things that were unique in some channels against other channels. And those were all really helpful sort of nuggets of information that we took with us to get to where we're at today.
Sure. Now, I would imagine like a smaller nonprofit that hears what you're talking about immediately might say like, well, we don't have the resources like they do to pull off this type of a campaign.
Sure.
Or to really invest in recurring donors in that sort of a way. What would you say to that? I mean, if I'm to guess, from what I see at a lot of even larger organizations, like you still have small teams that are pretty resource strapped, trying to figure out, what can I bootstrap together to make things work? Even more kind of looking around the organization to find existing programs and how can you build them up and build on top. So what would you say, to that small?
Well, I would first say that we ourselves, the Friends of Agency, are not that big.
Okay.
We are supporting the largest agency. But I think my advice would be to take a mission-focused, donor-centric approach to everything that you do. If you keep those two things in mind, good things will sort of come. And then you have to sort of look at what resources you have available right now.
Yeah.
And what talent you have available right now. I think a lot of organizations' leadership might ask you to sort of reach for the stars and things like that. And that's a nice sentiment, but there's realities that we have to work in.
Yeah.
And I think those kinds of things are taking those small steps and being patient with the process and continuing to be data driven, I think is a big, big thing. Often what I've run into in my career in digital fundraising has been, you produce some sort of idea and everyone at the table loves the idea, and then it doesn't work.
Sure. And
it's an adherence to those principles. They'll say, well, if that didn't work, then we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do what has been working and continuing to test against
Yeah.
your controls. But look to, I always say, like, what can you do today to move the needle along? You know, if we're working in world hunger and we have long-term goals to try and end world hunger by 2030.
Yeah.
But that's a big idea. How do we address that, you know, when I go to work on Friday?
Right.
What's the plan to sort of move that along and to sort of, like I say, be patient, and what can you work on right now in the tools and the talents, I think is another thing to look at too, especially look at the folks around the room that are there. What are they interested in? What can they bring to the table? I think we've done a lot of good stuff, from our graphical stuff, from the people on our teams, to the way we message.
Yeah.
We let other talents sort of come to the table and shine.
Sure.
I think that sort of helps lift all the boats, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that kind of brings us to my next question I have about just like innovation. I mean, you're talking about taking all these like incremental steps toward a huge goal of ending world hunger by 2030. I mean,
Right.
that's seemingly impossible to wrap your mind around, let alone go into the office tomorrow and know what am I going to do to get there.
Right.
So what is, like when I say the term nonprofit innovation, what does that mean to you? Why is it important, and how do you get there?
Sure. I think for me, nonprofit innovation, I see it as I'm always trying to keep up, and I've been doing this for like 12 years to stay on top of what's innovative. Certainly keeping my ear and eyes out for what might be the new thing to bring into the fold as far as the work.
Sure.
But I would also say that I think it's more about applying those donor-centric, mission-focused principles that are decades in the making, and just applying them to your work. I mean, for example, this year I think it was 50% of donation form conversions were mobile, and 50% were desktop, and that we had seen that trend line over the course of the last few years.
Yeah.
But I think by making sure that your donation forms are mobile optimized and making sure your emails are legible and engaging in a mobile device are part of donor centricism, right? It's meeting the donors where they are. And so that, again, that's just applying that mission-focused, donor-centric, those principles to what you're already doing. And like I said, those are decades in the making, and I think it's just a matter of sort of bringing that as in the back of your mind all the time in what you do.
So, kind of my last question, and you've touched on bits and pieces of it, but as you're pursuing innovation, even as you think about what you've built over the past couple of years in recurring giving, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced, or maybe what challenges do you foresee that you're going to have to tackle in the near future as you strive to keep growing and keep toward using this data-driven philosophy that you've applied?
I think, well, acquisition will always be a problem. So we always sort of look to, WFP is unfortunately not well known, and we're trying to rectify that.
Sure.
But when we can't do it proactively, we need to be able to be responsive to the news and leverage those opportunities of broad awareness about what we're working on. So that will always be a challenge. And I think that's a challenge for most nonprofits, how to make sure that they are top of mind for their donors and for those potential donors.
Yeah.
As far as the challenges that we had faced, I think it wasn't so much a challenge as it was sort of a way of explaining, but we had to sort of get the green light from leadership on what this strategy is. And having to talk to leadership about monthly giving as a way to address long-term revenue goals, but at the sacrifice of short-term revenue goals, right?
Right.
And so the way we did that was we made sure that we presented all of our performances and across our different efforts in those terms of, like, here's the one-time revenue, here are the return, here are the investment, here are the spends, and then we also showed that against the annualized, what that will look like in a year from now. And so that helped to sort of say, our current return on ad spend might be $1, which is a return, but like the annualized is $3. So like that helps to sort of crystallize what we're trying to accomplish and sort of and get the leadership's buy-in to the strategy.
Sure. It seems to be a really common challenge. You have
I would imagine leadership, I think in a lot of organizations have big bold vision, and I think that's really exciting, and that's why they're the leadership.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to people who are sort of in the trenches, so to speak, to execute upon those visions.
Yeah.
And I think if you can accept that sort of relationship, accept that big bold vision, that the aspirational nature of leadership in most organizations, and just try and convince them. Like, one of the things I would say, we would let's dream big, and I would say let's dream small. Let's dream big by dreaming small.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of the way that it was helpful to sort of explain those things. But I imagine that most nonprofits, convincing leadership of a particular tact or strategy can be difficult. So I would recommend bring your data to the conversation.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. That's what it's. I mean, in our experience as well, going back to the data, like, it's hard to argue with what the numbers say.
That's right.
There's lots of ways you can skew it and all of that, but
that's true. But I think at the end of the day, when that's what we do, we try and punch holes in our data. We try and consider other hypotheses as to why something may have happened.
Sure.
So I think that's always part of, and that's to me is part of the fun and what's exciting about working in this space.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Congratulations on winning the
thank you so
NIO
much.
award. We're thrilled that you are here and can join us, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Optimization inside it, baby. Ooh.